Championships, letdowns, and mid-season swaps. So this week I'm chatting all about your 2025 F1 predictions. So get ready, because you've been summoned to the Steward's office. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Steward's office. I'm Saira, and this week we are going to be chatting about your 2025 Formula 1 predictions. Now, I sent out a Google form sheet, I shared it on my social media and gave it to a couple of my friends with a couple of questions on what they thought was going to happen during this Formula 1 season. And this is one of my favourite things to do, I can't lie, because I love seeing what everyone thinks is going to happen. I love knowing what people's thoughts are before the season starts, and I know sometimes people do these sort of predictions after testing. For me, I love doing them before testing, before we have really anything to go off of. Maybe a couple of drivers' interviews here and there, a couple of rumours, maybe from factory workers and things, and really what we're basing it off of is either our own hopes and dreams or what we've kind of picked up on from the end of 2024. So I am excited to see what you guys think and also compare it to what I think is going to happen this season. But before we get into that, I do want to have a chat about F1 75, which did happen over last Tuesday now. Now, it was that huge event that was at the O2 in London. It was the season launch where all the teams showed off their liveries, and it was to celebrate 75 years of Formula 1 being a world championship, which is obviously a really huge milestone for F1 and it should be celebrated. And they opted to kick off the season doing this massive season launch. They've never done anything like this before, and I was watching it from home, and I don't know whether the atmosphere at the O2 added to the experience, but for me it wasn't something I necessarily really enjoyed. And it wasn't bad, I'm not saying that, but it wasn't something, I think if they did it next year I'd be super excited about. That being said, I think some of the ways that the teams were showing their liveries and doing their introductions were absolutely amazing, and I think it was Aston Martin in particular that really stood out to me. Theirs was such a beautiful reveal, and it was just done in such an Aston Martin way. But yeah, I think it was just a very interesting concept for them to have, and I think I just really prefer when the teams do their own individual launches because it makes it so much more personal. They have the chance to do it at their HQ or their factory bases and everything. They've got more time to chat about the car, and I think one of the things was that obviously there were strict time constraints with the drivers and the livery reveals, and so they were only really asked one question across all of the drivers on that team and their team principal. So you didn't really get much in terms of the interviews, which is understandable, but I think when we have those separate personal launches, we get a lot more from the drivers and the team principals. So that is something I think I prefer. Livery-wise, I think my two favourites have to be VCarb. They have such a gorgeous livery this year. I was not expecting them to be in basically all white. It's really reminiscent of that Red Bull special one-off white livery that they did, but I love the look of it. I think it looks really sleek and really cool, and I'm so excited to see that on track. But the other one, and I don't think many people are going to be surprised when I say this, is Ferraris. I absolutely adore that deeper shade of red that they've gone for. I think it's such a gorgeous shade. My only gripe, and I think a lot of people share this with me, is the fact that, yeah, we have that massive strip of white and the massive HP logo that's on the car, and it does kind of wreck it. I like it when it's an all red car and you just have the sponsorship stickers on the car where you need them. Did kind of ruin it, but I do love that shade of red that they've got on their car. It was an interesting watch though, to be fair, and I am very curious whether this is something that they will try and do again next year. I'm not really sure. I know a lot of the teams have also had to do separate car launches. Part of that I assume is because of sponsorship obligations that they might have, and also just wanting that time and that publicity for their own team, their own car, and for some of the teams it's giving back to their fans as well. So it will be interesting to see whether F1 try and do this next year and whether the teams will want to be involved in it. I do get why they did it this year, with it being 75 years of F1. It's such a big milestone and you want to kick off the season in a big way that's not been done before. So I kind of do see the sense in it. I just don't think it was the best executed, I guess. But it is done now. We have seen all of the liveries, and I mean, for teams like Red Bull and Aston Martin, we're not seeing much of a change in their livery, but the ongoing thing with Red Bull is that they never ever change their livery. You know what you're getting with a Red Bull livery. I do want to say though, and I can't figure out whether it was just me, but the Mercedes livery just looks slightly off to me this year. I can't figure out what it is, but me and my sister said it feels like the stars that they normally have at the back of the car are really squished together. Something just doesn't feel quite right with that livery, and I can't put my finger on what it is. So if you do know, please comment on this podcast or on the YouTube video and let me know what it is, because it's bugging me. Something doesn't look right, and maybe when I actually see it on track and in motion, it'll look right again, but yeah, something didn't feel right. But that is enough of F175, and let's have a chat about our 2025 F1 predictions. I had 43 responses on this Google form, which I don't think is too bad, actually, and I kicked off with asking about the team. So the first question was, who's going to be winning the Constructors' Championship? There were only 2 teams that people ended up voting for, and I don't think it's going to surprise anyone that that was McLaren and Ferrari. But what might surprise people is that Ferrari were actually the ones that were winning this. Around 72% of people thought that Ferrari were going to be winning the Constructors, compared to around about 27% of people that thought that McLaren were going to win the Constructors. Now, I am also on the wavelength that Ferrari is going to be winning the Constructors in 2025. But I did think more people would think that it was McLaren, or that there'd be more of a 50-50 split between the 2 teams, right? So I'm really curious what has led to people sort of swaying more towards Ferrari, and whether it's that experience that Lewis Hamilton is going to bring to the team that they think is going to help them, as well as the progress they'll make with the car. But yes, 72.1% of people thought that Ferrari are going to win the World Championship. Looking at the other end of the table though, I asked who was going to come in last place. And it doesn't surprise me at all that 86% of people think it's going to be Kick Sauber, and I have to agree. I think a lot of us are in agreement, considering where Sauber were last year, the fact that they are turning into Audi in 2026. I think a lot of us assume that Sauber will once again be at the bottom of the board. Now, I am hoping they get a few more points like in the championship this year. I'm hoping that, you know, they can claw back a little bit more than what they did in 2024. But I think a lot of us are in agreement that even if they do make that improvement, it won't be leaps and bounds compared to the other teams. There were like 4 other teams that people had voted for. So in second place, with 7% of the votes were V-Carb or Racing Bulls. I don't necessarily see this happening. I know they had a bit of a rocky end to 2024, but I don't see them being in last place. They still seem like quite a solid team at the moment. I think they're solidly going to be in that midfield. And then there was 1 vote for Alpine, 1 vote for Haas, and 1 vote for Williams. Now with Williams, I could have seen it, but I think the addition of Carlos Sainz and the way that the drivers and James Vowles are talking about the car right now, it seems quite positive. So I can't see them being in last place. And with Alpine and Haas, I mean, they had very strong seasons last year. Alpine finished in P6, Haas in P7. Really strong seasons for both of their teams, and I think they've got decent cars to carry on developing into this year, so I don't think that they're going to be last. But I do fully agree with the majority here that Kick Sauber are going to be in last place. After that, it was like a multiple choice question of who people thought were going to be involved in the Constructors' title battle, because I do think we're actually going to get a battle this year. A lot like last year, I don't think one team is going to run away with it. Every single person voting believed that McLaren was going to be involved in the Constructors' Championship. But then only 95.3% of people thought that Ferrari were going to be involved, which kind of confused me because a lot of you thought that Ferrari were going to win the championship. But those are the top 2 teams that people think are going to be involved, which I think makes perfect sense, and I really do agree with that. It goes down to around 46-47% when you look at Red Bull. I could see them, if they don't start the season out strongly, right, I could see them making a resurgence in the second half of the season. And whether that'll be enough to catch up to the likes of McLaren and Ferrari in P1 and P2, if they're there, I don't know, but I could see them having that comeback. Goes down to about a quarter of people thinking Mercedes are going to be involved, and then less than 5% thinking Aston Martin. In all honesty, I don't think Mercedes and Aston Martin will be involved in that title fight or fighting towards the front that frequently. I think Mercedes, and I think I said this in the preview episode as well, I think they will stand a really good chance of fighting for podiums here and there and wins here and there, but I don't think it'll be very consistent for them. And with Aston Martin, it's just hard to tell. I am hoping that they have a strong car this year and it's better than last year for them, but they're a team that I would really have to wait and see, but I don't think realistically they're going to be fighting for a constructor's title. This one I found so interesting to look at because it was which team you thought was going to be the biggest surprise this year. And I do mean surprise in a good way, right? And look, there wasn't like a massive majority. About 37% of people thought that the biggest surprise was going to end up being Haas. Now, considering what their form was like in 2024, I 100% see why people think that. In second place with like 23%-ish of the vote was Williams. Then 14% said Aston Martin and just over 11.5% thought it would be Alpine. And then there were a couple of votes for Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes and VCARB. Now for me, I think the biggest surprise will be Alpine. I hope for their sake this year that they are going to have a much more consistent car, and I think it's going to be fairly strong because the way they ended 2024 was looking very, very good. I can't tell with Haas. I don't think it's going to be a bad car. I think they will pick up where they left off last season, but I don't really know where they're going to end up in that championship standing to say they'll be the biggest surprise. And with Williams, maybe I'm just trying to temper my expectations with them because they had such a rough 2024. But with Carlos Sainz being added into the team, he is a very, very strong driver. We know Alex Albon is a good driver. So yeah, there is a chance that they could be quite a big surprise. For me personally, I would say Alpine or Williams. I don't know why, but I don't think it'll be Haas. Then came an even more interesting question in which team people thought was going to be the biggest letdown of this season. And there are two teams that came in quite close, right? But I think I'm actually going to do this one backwards. So with the least amount of votes was Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. They only had one person vote for them, saying they were going to be the biggest letdown. Then it was Williams and Alpine, who had 2 people vote for them each. McLaren and Aston Martin both had 4 votes for them, which I think is a little bit harsh for McLaren especially, because I don't think they're going to be that much of a letdown, but I don't know whether people think in terms of them winning another championship maybe. After that, people said it was going to be Red Bull, and about 32.6% of people thought it would be Red Bull. But coming in first place with 37.2% of the vote was Mercedes. I do have to agree there. I think Mercedes are gonna have a difficult season. Now, part of that is gonna be the fact that they have a very young rookie in their car in Kimi Antonelli. He's 18 years old. He's only just passed his driving license test. I think there's obviously going to be a couple of teething problems there, and that's what you would expect. That's nothing against Kimi Antonelli. It's just what you expect when a new driver is coming onto the grid. And I'll say that of all the rookies, right? But he's also coming into a very powerful team and powerful car compared to, the likes of Gabriel Bortoleto in Sauber or Ollie Behrman in Haas. But part of it, I also think, will not just be because of Kimi Antonelli by no means. So I think he's going to be the reason they'll have a difficult season. I think they're still struggling with that car. I think they're still trying to figure out what works for them and what doesn't, and why the car behaves in certain ways. It didn't feel like they fully had a handle on that in 2024. Yes, there were tracks that it worked very well at, but I think there was still a lot of figuring out and problem solving that they were doing. So I do have to agree with you guys. I think Mercedes will be a bit of a letdown. With Red Bull, because there wasn't much. 16 people voted for Mercedes, 14 people voted for Red Bull. So there really wasn't much in it. And for Red Bull, I also understand what people are saying. And it really will depend on whether Red Bull can find that form that they've had. And I think that is generally going to be quite difficult for them, only because the likes of McLaren in particular from last year really unlocked pace in their car, have managed to extract as much as they can from it, and I'm sure they're still extracting more now. They extracted as much as they could within the confines of the cost cap and wind tunnel testing and everything. Lando Norris really pushed that car as much as he could. Oscar Piastri pushing and learning as he's going along as well. And I'm so curious because it wasn't just that Red Bull couldn't keep up with that pace of development, I think, that McLaren and Ferrari at times were doing. But I think with Red Bull, they almost lost their way a little bit. The car wasn't behaving the way they wanted it to. It wasn't just that they were a little bit slower. There were behavior issues with that car, right? So it depends on whether they figured that out or not. But I think with Red Bull, it's going to be something they figure out towards the end of the season, in the second half of the season, or coming towards summer break. I think that's when it'll be. I don't know whether it'll be straight away. Moving away from the team, so I'm coming on to the F1 drivers, and we of course started off with the question, who's going to win the Drivers' Championship? 46.5% of you guys think it's going to be Charles Leclerc. 25.6% thought it was going to be Lewis Hamilton. So a lot of you guys really putting the stock into the Ferrari drivers this year. 14% of people thought it would be Lando Norris, which I was quite surprised at. I thought more people would have thought Lando was going to win a championship this year. 11.6% think it's going to be Oscar Piastri, and then only one person voted for Max Verstappen. I will agree with the Max one. I'm not expecting him to win a 5th championship this year, at least. It might come later on in his career, but I think Red Bull, in comparison to McLaren and Ferrari right now, are on the back foot, and I think this is going to be a year of them just trying to figure out what to do with the car. Honestly, though, I genuinely thought more people would have picked one of the McLaren drivers because of how strong that McLaren car has been. But a lot of you are putting stock specifically in Charles Leclerc to win his 5th championship with Ferrari, and then Lewis Hamilton. Now, 2 of my favourite drivers are Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, so I find it really hard to pick between them anyway. And it's really hard to think which driver in general is going to win a championship, but I am going to put my backing behind Lewis Hamilton. If he can find his feet in that Ferrari, I think he is just going to be a hard driver to beat. Now, who's coming last in the Drivers' Championship? And there were, let me check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different people that you guys voted for. Now let's work on this backwards, right? So with 1 vote each, we had Esteban Ocon, Nico Hülkenberg, and Kimi Antonelli. So they all had 1 vote each. Nico Hülkenberg, I think, would be fair with the Sauber, but we've also seen how he's able to drive a car very, very well. Esteban Ocon, I think, is a little bit harsh. I don't think he's going to be last in the drivers. He is a good driver himself. On top of the Haas not being a bad car at all. And Kimi Antonelli is also a little bit harsh. He is a rookie, I get it, but I don't think by any means he'll be last in the championship. After that, people voted for Lance Stroll. Really, guys? Look, I know he might not be the strongest driver on the grid. Might not be the best, right? But I don't think he's coming in last place. Isaac Hadjar was next with about 9.1% of the vote, which I could potentially see, but I don't think it's the most likely thing to happen. After that is Gabriel Bortoleto. He had about 34% of the vote, and then with 45.5% of the vote was Jack Doohan, and that I'm not surprised with. Jack Doohan, mentioned it in not last week, 2 weeks ago, the preview episode that I did, right? Rumours are that he is on a slightly almost short-term contract that is dependent on his performance with Alpine, right? Rumours are that he's got up until Miami to prove that he's a good F1 driver, and if he's not, they're going to put in Franco Colapinto. So I personally think that's potentially where a lot of people are coming from when they're voting for Jack Doohan. Even with those rumours going on, I think it might be Gabriel Bortoleto because of how bad the Sauber is. Nico, I think, might be able to get a point or 2, but he has a lot more experience, and his qualifying pace really helps set him up into a good position. Gabriel Bortoleto is coming into the team brand new. He's a rookie, and the car is not great. So I am going to say it'll be Gabriel Bortoleto who's coming in last place. Hopefully, though, with some points on the board. Hopefully he's not at the bottom with 0 points. Who do you guys think is going to be involved in the driver's title battle? Now, this is an interesting one for me, right? Another multiple choice one. No surprise that Charles Leclerc had the most amount of votes here. You had 39 votes, 88.6% of people were voting for Charles Leclerc. After that was Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Lando I can see, Charles I can see. Max I'm so hesitant to say right now, and not because of his driving, but once again because of the Red Bull car. After that, about nearly 80% of you said Lewis Hamilton, about 70% of you said Oscar Piastri, and then there were a couple of outliers, I guess, with 4 people voting for George Russell, one person voting for Fernando Alonso and one for Carlos Sainz. I don't mean this in a mean way, but I don't think it's the most likely that those three will be in a battle for the championship. And if one of them is going to be, I would assume it would be George Russell. Carlos Sainz, I think, is a very big long shot with where the Williams car is right now. But realistically for me, I can see it being Lando, Charles and Lewis. Those are the three, I think. Max is really dependent on the car, and Oscar, I don't think is going to be trailing behind by much, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be in the title fight for this year at least. Then I asked who is going to be the biggest surprise on the grid. And out of 20 possible drivers, 15 of them were voted for. So I'm just going to go through like the top 3. Yeah, let's go with the top 3, which actually ends up being the top 2 because all the scores are tied. So with about 9% each is Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz, I think, is coming from a place of him doing very well in the Williams, and Charles Leclerc, I think, is because people think that he might win a championship this year. But then with 18.2% of the vote each, it's Kimi Antonelli and Ollie Behrman, so 2 of the rookies on the grid. Now, for me personally, I think the biggest surprise will be Ollie Behrman. And I don't think it's going to be surprising that he does well, but I still got him down as my biggest surprise. I think he's going to do very, very well this year. He's already shown in a Ferrari and a Haas car that he can drive very well. He's got the maturity for it, in my opinion. So he is down as my biggest surprise. I'm not saying that Kimi Antonelli isn't going to have a good season, but I just think there's going to be something about Ollie Behrman that, you know, is going to catch everyone's eye this year. All right, who is going to be the biggest letdown in 2025 with your drivers? And now with a good couple of drivers people voted for, so we're going to go through the top 3 again. With 9.1% of the vote each was Jack Doohan and Lando Norris. Jack Doohan, I don't know whether it's because people think that he won't be able to perform and will be leaving in the season if the rumours are true. Lando Norris, I don't know whether it's coming from a place of he might have the car but not win the championship, so I'm not sure there, but yeah, those 2 are tied for 3rd place. In 2nd place was Liam Lawson. Now, he's one we haven't spoken about much today, actually, but Liam Lawson is stepping into that Red Bull in the place of Sergio Perez, and I think a lot of people are curious how he is going to adapt to that car and being Max's teammate. And by the sounds of it, some people think that he's not going to cope very well with that task. But with nearly 30% of the vote, which is interesting considering your biggest surprise votes, in 1st place for your biggest letdown is Kimi Antonelli. Like I said, slightly confused because a lot of you thought he was going to be the biggest surprise. Equally, some of you think he's going to be the biggest letdown. I don't know with this one, guys, and I think a lot of it with the drivers will be car dependent and what they have as a car. Kimi Antonelli and Liam Lawson, to be fair, are 2 drivers that have a lot of pressure going into this season. They're both rookies, and okay, yes, Liam Lawson has done a lot of races actually in Formula 1. He raced in 2023 and 2024 as a reserve driver. So he might not be a rookie in the most traditional sense of the word, but he is still a rookie. He's not done a full season of Formula 1. And Kimi Antonelli is coming straight out of Formula 2 into F1, right? He's not done a Grand Prix weekend. And they're not settling into teams that are further back in the field, where there are less eyes on them, where there's not as much pressure. They are in cars, and, you know, in Liam Lawson's case, the team he's joining has a 4-time world champion who won the championship last year. This is a team that had one of the most dominant cars in this set of regulations quite recently. There's a lot of pressure, and with Kimi Antonelli, he's going to a team that has seen so much success in recent years, and yes, this set of regulations hasn't worked out for them, but yeah, they have a vast amount of success in that team. And with Kimi in particular, there's been so much media hype about him, right? And there's been so much media attention, and some of that coming from Mercedes and Total Wolff, some of that coming from the Formula 1 world more widely. But there's a lot of pressure to keep on an 18-year-old's shoulders. So I do think it's just got to be difficult mentally to cope with all of that. And I am curious how they're both going to be able to deal with that. And hopefully they will have a lot of support from their team and their family and loved ones. Right, moving on to the driver with the most amount of pole positions. And I'm not surprised, right, that over 67% of you voted for Charles Leclerc. He is a master at qualifying. We know what he can extract from a car with one lap pace. So I am 100% in the same boat as you guys. I do think Charles Leclerc will get the most amount of poles this year. After that, you guys thought it would be Lando Norris and then Lewis Hamilton. Moving on to the drivers with the most amount of wins. And once again, with around 39% of the vote is Charles Leclerc. After that, you guys thought it was going to be Lewis Hamilton and then Lando Norris, followed by Max Verstappen. I have to agree. Between Lewis and Charles, I'm saying it's going to be one of the Ferrari drivers, in my opinion, because I have a very good feeling about the Ferrari this year, guys. I then had people vote for who they thought was going to be involved in a mid-season swap, and they could vote for more than one driver here. Jack Doohan did get the most amount of votes, so he had like 72% of people vote for him, and I genuinely think that stems from so many of the rumours that we're getting. After that, a lot of people think Liam Lawson is going to be out of his seat in the middle of the season. I would be curious who they put in that seat, though, because would it be Yuki Tsunoda? Would it not? Who'd you put there? I don't know. I think Red Bull are really trying to figure out what the future is for them with their driver lineup, you know. After that, a couple of you think Isaac Hadjar is going to be out of a seat in the middle of the season. I don't know whether you guys think he is going to move up to the Red Bull seat or not, but that was one of the drivers you thought, or whether you think he is going to be out of a seat. Arvid Lindblad has, I think, just qualified for his super license, and he is a driver in the Red Bull Junior Academy that Christian Horner seems to be very interested in and excited about. So potential is there, maybe. Yuki Tsunoda next, and I do think if Liam Lawson is to leave, they will bring Yuki Tsunoda up into that seat. Gabriel Bortoleto, a couple of people saying Esteban Ocon or Alex Albon. Actually, it was one vote each for those two. Although I don't know why you think Alex Albon is going. I don't think he's leaving. I don't think Esteban Ocon is either. Kimi Antonelli also got a vote. I don't see him going. I think Mercedes are gonna have a fair bit of patience with Kimi, even if he doesn't do, you know, absolutely brilliantly in his first season. I think they'll have that patience with him because they really believe in him as a driver and as a person. And they want him to be that future of Mercedes. They want him to be their next champion. Two people did say, though, that we would have no mid-season swaps. And in an ideal world, we wouldn't have any. It would be great. The drivers would have security in their jobs. I wouldn't have to mess up my spreadsheet. Life would be great. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think we are going to have at least one mid-season swap, if not more. Now, my final sort of multiple choice question was just who you thought was going to be the rookie of the year, the person finishing the highest in the Drivers' Championship, and 50% of people thought it would be Kimi Antonelli. Makes perfect sense, though, really. I mean, he is the driver that's going to be in one of the strongest cars as a rookie, as well as Liam Lawson. But only 13.6% of you guys thought Liam Lawson was going to be Rookie of the Year. So I don't know whether that's down to driving ability or how you feel the cars are going to perform. But that's quite an interesting one because there's a big difference there, because in second place, wedged in between those two, is Ollie Behrman with 36.4% of the vote. But he's in a Haas. So I'm very curious. I personally think it will be Kimi Antonelli. I think Liam Lawson might struggle a little bit in that Red Bull seat. I can't lie, the second seat does feel cursed at times, but I think he will struggle a little bit, and I think Kimi might be able to settle into his team a little bit better and get to grips with the car a little bit better. But Liam Lawson does have a lot more experience in terms of Grand Prix, so who knows? And for all we know, it could be Ollie Behrman. Last question really was, what are your most unhinged predictions for next season? So I'm going to go through just a couple of them. So you have a Ferrari 1-2 in the Drivers' Championship, but I don't think that's unhinged. I think that there is a very likely chance that could happen. There'll be a race where all of the rookies DNF. I hope not, because we currently have 6 rookies on the grid, and I really hope over a quarter of our grid does not DNF for a single race. Is there the potential of it happening? Of course, weirder things have happened in Formula 1, right? But I'm hoping it doesn't. Lando Norris wins all of the races. think that might be a small bit of a long shot. You know, even in Max Verstappen's super dominant, era with the car, was not able to win all of the races in a season. Had a very good win streak, but struggled to win all of the races in a season. Ferrari won't properly manage both Lewis and Charles going for the title, which will allow McLaren to win both the WDC and the WCC, a reverse of the 2007 season. I can see where this person is coming from, to be fair, but I do think Fred Vasseur will have a better handle with his drivers and how to manage them better. I think he will be very good at that. Max retires? I don't think so. Not yet, guys. I don't know. We float around the retirement word a lot with Max. I feel like lately it's been floated around more with him than it has the likes of Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. I think there'll be a couple more years. I don't think he's going to retire this year. One Williams podium like in the first 5 races and it'll bring false hope and they won't be able to do well afterward. Would I take a Williams podium early on in the season just for them not to do well for the rest of the season? That's a question that I'm trying to answer. Yes. But do I want consistency? Or do I want a Williams podium? Consistency or a podium? I'm gonna go for a podium. Consistency would be nice. I want them to do well, but I would love to see a Williams podium. I think James would be so chuffed seeing that. McLaren disqualified from the constructors. What have they done? I mean, it's been a while since we've had a team fully disqualified from the constructors, hasn't it? I feel like it's been a little while. I'm gonna have to Google that one. It'll probably end up as a TikTok video at some point. But yeah, I'd be very curious in what this person thought they might be disqualified for. Andrea will win and George won't. You know what? It took me a second to realise you mean Kimi Antonelli, because I was thinking of like Andrea Stella. But yeah, that would be a very interesting one. I think both Mercedes drivers could win. They will at least both get podiums if both don't win, I think. We'll have 3 mid-season swaps and no one is going to be happy in their teams. The FIA are going to come up with a brand new rulebook that includes all manner of things none of us can think of right now. Lewis will win the WDC and one of the commentators will announce that it's his 9th title live on air and not even realise the slip up. I know who sent this one. Do you know what? 3 mid-season swaps. Not wild if you think Jack Doohan, Yuki Tsunoda, Liam Lawson. If we were going to say that, that's not that wild. I can't lie. The FIA are coming up with a couple of new rules. I think all the fines and penalties for swearing is a lot. I'd be very interested to see what else comes up this season because I don't think we're at the end of that. Love for Lewis to win the WDC, and yeah, I could imagine one of the commentators accidentally announced this in it's his 9th title. Completely plausible in my opinion that all of that could end up happening. All rookie podium, I would love to see that, but which of the 6 would you like on the podium is the question. I love this. It just says somehow Checo returns, but returns is also with a capital R. Checo Perez returning to Formula 1. It wouldn't surprise me though. It might be a bit unhinged, but would it surprise me? No. I could see him coming back. Don't know where, don't know with who, but I could see him returning. And we'll end with Fernando announces his retirement. I hope not. I hope Fernando Alonso doesn't announce retirement yet. I think his contract is up at the end of 2026. So there's not long until I'm sure people are going to be asking him, what are your future plans? Are you retiring? Have you re-signed with Aston Martin yet? I'm sure those questions will come up soon, but I genuinely don't think he is quite ready to retire just yet. I did have a little box with anything else people wanted to add. Had a Forza Ferrari, Franco on the grid at some point, and yeah, I think should that rumour about Jack Doohan be true, it will be Franco Colapinto going into that car. Oscar defends his Grill the Grid championship. I hope he does. I hope he manages to defend it and win it again this season. I know my Charles predictions are out there, but I have to manifest. I get it, no worries. Gotta manifest that, but I think this is going to be a good season for Charles Leclerc. And those are all of your predictions for the 2025 season. I don't think there's anything that I'm super shocked at. I think a lot of them I agree with. Some of them I have slightly different opinions, but I don't think there was anything I was massively like, whoa, not on the same wavelength as you guys here. But it's really not long until we find out what's going to happen. testing is, I mean, this is going to be posted on Tuesday. Wednesday is testing. So we will get our first taste of cars on track. And as usual with F1 testing, guys, we cannot take what we see on screen as gospel here. You know, times don't always matter. Times never really matter in testing. Reliability and number of laps do tend to matter a lot more here. But it will be interesting because you get a better read from the drivers on how they feel about the car as well. And I think that's what I'm most interested in hearing about, is what the drivers think and what they're feeling about it. Obviously, they can't say a whole load, but sometimes you can get it from their body language and what they're not saying about the car. But yeah, 3 days of testing, 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. I think it is UK time. I can't wait. It'll be on in the background whilst I'm working. We are getting cars back on track, guys, because then I think it's 2 weeks and it's the Australian Grand Prix. So I cannot wait, and we'll have answers and see if our predictions are right. But thank you guys so much for listening. Next week I will be back and we'll have a chat about all things that went on in testing. But make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Steward_office, and I will see you guys the next time you are summoned to the Steward's office.